Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's enjoying their December so far. Thank you for joining us for the webinar, Helping Your Students Identify, Develop, and Utilize Their Not So Soft Skills. Today we have Cynthia Peters and Jen Denton with us, so welcome them and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us. We are so excited to be here today. This has been a wonderful partnership that we've been able to enjoy with Essential Education and World Ed and the Change Agent. And Cynthia, if you want to say hello, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Peters, editor of the Change Agent at World Education. It's been such a pleasure to work with Jen developing this content for you. Happy to be here today.
Yay, yay. Well, we are trying to load the screen up, and I think I'm going to go camera off for a little bit so we have a little bit more bandwidth today. But you have joined us today for a session that we are super passionate about, and we've been cultivating and tweaking and working on really over, gosh, Cynthia, over the last year or so now, I think. We are going to be sharing about transferable skills, helping your students identify, develop, and utilize their not so soft skills. And some of you probably join Cynthia and I in the sentiment that these are not soft skills. These are powerful skills. And I think as we vet them out a little bit more today, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. So I'm happy to be here from Essential Ed, and I know that Cynthia is happy to be here from World Ed. Well, let's go ahead and jump into kind of what we want to do today, our learning goals and objectives. We're going to talk about how very important it is for you to be able to help explain to your students their ability to identify, first of all, letting them know that they have, identify, and then amplify, be able to articulate these very, very valuable transferable skills. We're going to talk about identifying and using resources. You will be amazed at the resources that you are going to get today through Change Agent, and using these resources to help students discover, and then here's my favorite word about this, celebrate those power skills that they have. And then we're going to give you access to tons of adaptable materials for you to use with your students. So when we say transferable skills, what exactly are we referring to? Well, transferable skills are portable. They are, like this backpack in this picture. They're tools that you can pack and you can take from one circumstance, one environment, one job to another. So these transferable skills are used in a variety of roles or applications. They're sometimes called life skills, problem-solving skills, these everyday, daily task type skills, and they are abundant in our non-traditional classrooms with our adult education students. And what very, very few see, and what we really, really want our students to gain pride and celebration in, is how marketable, how valuable these skills are if they are going to pursue higher education in college, and whatever path vocationally or from a career standpoint they want to pursue, because these are power skills. And here's where we get to talk about that not so soft part of the title. And I love this quote. It comes straight from World Ed. Though commonly used, we avoid the term soft skills because it often trivializes and oversimplifies the rigor, the depth, centrality of these skills, which should not be reduced solely to workplace punctuality and etiquette. And I love Jean's comment there in the chat. She said everyone has soft skills or transferable skills. They just don't realize it. And that's what we are here to do, to help those little light bulbs come on within ourselves, and being able to share some of our own transferable skills to give our students ideas, and then help them to really, really connect with their own internal transferable skills. So before we do begin, we always want to kind of put this out, this note about equity. While we should affirm, and we are going to do that, the importance of personal and workplace success skills, we often have to start to navigate ourselves and our students really through this perceived lack of soft skills that is too often used against people of color, perhaps to rationalize discrimination and bias in hiring practices. Further, workers who speak out against unacceptable or exploitive working conditions may be told that they sometimes lack teamwork, communication, or flexibility skills simply because they won't go along with the status quo. And I think we're going to see some shifts there. I think as people own the power of their own transferable skills, but I think Gen Z is going to throw us for a loop because they are not a generation who goes along with the status quo. So I think that's going to be something that we see a shift in as well. Well, here is an activity that I love. I don't know if you all happen to see, it was an article that was published in Forbes. It made several other headlines, and it was all of the job qualifications or the job classifications, the job experiences of a mother. In other words, if you were putting together a wanted ad, a classified ad for a mom, this is what you might put in that ad. And if you're joining us in the chat today and you're a mom or you're a parent in general, dads, we see you too, then pop in. Let us know the extra things that you would add to this list. Banker, censor, ooh, that's a good one. Chauffeur, cheerleader, chief justice, chore delegator, clock keeper, coach, concierge. Ooh, I feel like that some days. Confidant, crossing guard, curfew warden, diplomat, disc jockey, entertainer, expectation manager, fashion stylist. You get the drift all the way down. There's some that stand out. Internet safety monitor. Bethel and I were just talking about changes in AI to our adult students and our lives in general before we started. And there's a lot of internet safety things to be talked about there. Personal assistants, purchasing agents, librarians, relationship specialists. Whew. I have a teen boy who just broke up with his sweet little girlfriend, and we're doing that these days. Repair person, shipping and receiving agent, teacher, transportation coordinator, and I love this last one, zookeeper. Sometimes I feel like I am a zookeeper. And I just had my little Frenchie raise her ears. I think she heard me talking about her. Yes, and you are correct. Worrier is a big one on there. Grandmas experience these same things. No raise expected. That's that as well. But speaking of the monetary component of that, within some of these articles, a 2021 survey was noted, and it was a survey of 19,000 moms from salary.com, and it estimated the value of a mother's work by tracking the real-time market prices of all of the jobs that moms perform. And the result was $184,820 per year. Cynthia, that's probably what you're making, right? That's,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. That's,
Something like that, yeah.
And so the point of that article, obviously, and the point that we're trying to make here is these skills are multifaceted. The things that we do day to day, the things that our students day to day do and participate in are marketable. So we have to help them own these soft, quote unquote, soft skills. So we ask you, what kind of soft skills are required in an adult educator? Go ahead and pop some of those in the chat. I'll kind of monitor that, Cynthia, as we go on, and you get to tell them about all of the wonderful resources, the first of which we're going to kick off right now.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for taking us through that. That was a great introduction to transferable skills. And I love that you ended with a note about all the different hats that an adult educator wears. And I see people putting a lot of great things in the chat, that they're counselors, confidants, encouragers, guides, just touching on a lot of things from the mom list, compassion, communication. Adult education teachers have a lot of transferable skills as well. And we're just noticing here that part of our job as adult education teachers is to help our students identify and amplify those transferable skills that they already have, but they may never have had words for or ever been taken seriously or had to describe in any kind of a way. And one source of content for being able to notice these skills is the stories in the Change Agent. And I don't know if people are familiar with the Change Agent or not, but in case you're not, it's a magazine published, a national magazine published 3 times a year that includes almost 100% writing by adult learners. And so it has a peer-to-peer quality. When you teach with content from the Change Agent, you're teaching with content written by your students' peers. And then there are activities in the a magazine that are college and career readiness aligned, and help you as a teacher bring a classroom ready piece of teaching material into the classroom. So I want to take a time now to explore one of these resources, and I'll just put in the chat a link to I wonder if you could help me get the link, Jen, that it's in the
I
notes
can.
section.
I can
Yeah, great.
definitely do that. We kind of had we went a little off kilter here a little bit. So
There you
there we
go.
go. Let's go back and we'll grab that link right there. There we got
So it's the
it.
one under
My
the,
computer kind of went crazy there for a second. My transferable
that's
skill
okay.
is I'm learning how to pivot this computer. Yeah. Right here. We'll pop in here.
So, okay, great. And so if you could also just click on it on your screen, then it will open up, and everybody will be able to see it. So so this is a link that you should be able to click on from the chat, and it should open up directly onto your computer so you can see it. I'm hoping everybody will just take about 2 minutes to skim the first article. And in case anyone's having technical problems with that, I will also just kind of give you a synopsis of what's in the article. So the first article is called "Suddenly We Are Teachers." And it's a story by a woman named Fabiola Santos. She's from New York City. And during COVID, she had to suddenly monitor her 3 children attending school via Zoom. And this was with her having only one smartphone in the house, not very good internet access, and 3 children all needing to be able to get on Zoom. And over time, the story explains that she figured out how to apply to the city for tablets so she could get free tablets for her kids to be able to log on to Zoom. And then she not only did that, she supported other parents who she became aware they did not have tablets. They didn't know about the application process. Perhaps English wasn't their first language, and so they didn't know how to follow those steps and navigate those steps. So she kind of started with, facing her own problem in her own household, getting help from the city, and then reaching out to the community and supporting them to get help from the city. And so this is not all the while kind of monitoring her kids, being on Zoom. And the title of the piece is "Suddenly We Are Teachers." So she suddenly became like a homeschooling mom. And so it's a great story with a lot of transferable skills, right? That she ended up deploying, which she may never have actually named for herself. And so reading a story like this with your students, you could engage in a process of naming and making visible and lifting up the actual skills that she uses to get her kids through this COVID period. So I'm going to check and see have people had a chance to maybe skim it yourself, or now I've kind of told you the story. I wonder if you would maybe want to share a little bit in the chat, probably is best. What transferable skills does this mom show? How would you name them? I want to,
If you're still popping on with us, looks like we've got some people popping in. Just go ahead and
yes.
skim this and we'll start talking about these skills that stand out. Resourceful, advocate. That was one of the ones that came to mind. Critical thinking, tech skills, definitely. Cynthia, you want to grab a couple that stand out to you?
Sure. Caring, troubleshooting, flexibility, time management, team player, digital literacy, being able to learn new things, being connected to people, dedication. But those are great. Persistence, not giving up. A digital navigator. Very good. Also, there's a new term people are using, digital resilience. She showed digital resilience. In other words, faced with a digital problem, she didn't just go, I can't do that. I don't know anything about that. She figured it out. Using community resources and sharing information about community resources, knowing how to fill out an application. Yeah. So this student, this mom, Fabiola Santos, has a lot of ingredients that she could actually add to her resume. And with a little coaching and advising, you could help frame, her skills here as, volunteer activity, digital skills, community engagement, community organizer, all kinds of ways that you could sort of tease out what she did here. And what you see, if you can scroll down a little bit, Jen, you'll
Sure.
see other articles. See, if there's just pause here for this story by Fatou Daffé. She talks about caring for her son, who she discovers has autism, and what that took, and all the different kind of dead ends she went down and what she had to do to get the proper care for her son. It's really a powerful story, and from a very strong woman who may or may not notice that those are actually transferable skills that you could share with an employer. And the next one is by the same author, I think. But in this case, she talks about defending her son against racism. And again, really digs deep for skills, resources, and courage to show up at the school and kind of advocate for her son at the school. And then there's one more, I think it's a picture story by a student talking and noticing how her kids were eating so much unhealthy food and what could she do about it. And she drew this wonderful picture story to talk about the strategy she came up with to help get her kids to eat more nutritious food. And then that's a 2-pager. If you scroll down a little further, you'll see that then there's an activity sheet on the next page down that helps you and to support your students to identify and name these family skills. So in the first column, what are some things that you do for your family, and what are some of the skills connected to that activity? So just to parse out what are the skills that are being deployed. So this graphic organizer could help you do that. You could make your own graphic organizer, but this is a start if you wanted to use this as a model. And this is included in the packet that you clicked on in the chat. And so with one more page, and this is just a kind of a checklist style to notice things I have done. And so
I love this activity. I just got to interrupt you and say, this is probably one of my favorite activities in this issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's so empowering for students to see this list of activities, to notice that they've done probably the vast majority of these, and then to be able to then extrapolate from it what are the skills associated with that activity. So this is what you get in that packet. And we wanted to leave you not just with a lot of information that one way that we give out to you, but leave you with some materials that you can now take into the classroom and work with your students to start sharing this with them. And then there's one more packet. If you go back to the PowerPoint and click on the next slide.
And we kind of did this activity. We walked through this. So, but this is something that when you get the slide deck, and we have people asking about the PDF there in the chat, some of these activities we're doing with you, but you can do these same activities with your students. So we've got reference points there.
And one of the activities here is just to have your students write a job description for someone who is in the role of Fabiola. So as the editor of the Change Agent, the person who creates these activities, I'm just thinking about you as teachers in the classroom and trying to give you like at least a start for how you could take it into the classroom and do some activities, and sort of assuming that you'll build off of it in various creative ways. But I want to give you a way to get started.
For sure. And Cynthia, I think here's that other packet you were talking about.
Great. Yes. And could you put in the chat the packet?
I just saw that. I sure can. I can grab that.
So we'll put those links back in. So, because by now it's like so far high up in the chat, it's hard to scroll back that far. And then also Jen will be putting in the link to this packet, which is a similar packet to the one that we, the parent one. This is a different kind of one. It's students who have written articles about their volunteer work. And it's really lovely just to read students' voices on this. They're very diverse voices. Some of them are immigrants, some of them are not, some of them learning English as a second language, some not. One disabled person, various people coming, another person who is formerly incarcerated. And he writes about a volunteer work as a way to kind of re-enter and build up your resume. There's some jobs you might not be able to get with a depending on what your record is. But there's some volunteer work that you can do to kind of show yourself, create a track record as being responsible and having certain skills. So if you want to scroll through this a little bit, we won't take time to read any of them, but you can see some of the headlines. The first story is somebody writing about volunteering at a school. And then the next story is an article by a woman from a Native American reservation in Arizona. And she talks about lobbying for a playground for the children on the reservation. Again, very powerful story. This is by a student who is not a citizen and can't vote, but who feels like it's his responsibility at election time to make sure he's talking to people who can vote about voting and about the issues and about the impact of voting. So it's a very impressive piece. You know, many people might think, oh, I can't vote, so I don't have to pay attention, but he's actually putting his attention on voting, even though he personally can't vote. So again, a couple more articles. One more. Oh, this is the one I mentioned about if you have a criminal record, you can still find a pathway to a career through volunteering. And I think finally, we might have included that checklist again at the end. Oh, this is a person who has cerebral palsy who writes about volunteering, and that's how it's meaningful, not just to the people she supports in her volunteer work, but for herself as well. And then we have this checklist here again, because people might be prompted after having read these articles to see their own history with those skills.
And that's what one of the things I love that Change Agent does is it gives the students and really the teachers some pre-thinking activities before they work into the words from the students themselves. And then that helps those little bells to go off to say, oh, wait, that's what they're talking about. Oh, wait, I've done something similar. And then these types of activities really, really bring it home to really, really personalize that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I hope, if you have any questions, let me know in the chat and I'll try to monitor that and be able to answer them. Hopefully you all have the links.
If you can repost that first link, Cynthia, I think that's what people were asking for right there.
I'll repost both links. And, be in touch if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them in the chat and I'll put my email address there too, so you can reach out to me if you need to. All right, Jen, take it.
Perfect. So if you haven't guessed already, and you haven't inferred already, these transferable skills are very, very important. And so these are just some of the things that stand out that add value to transferable skills. It's that work ethic validation. I love that quote from World Ed because it was saying that these skills go beyond just showing up to work on time and doing the minimum. These are skills that I like to call lightning bolt skills because they're the types of things that if our students are empowered with this type of language to go in and represent for themselves, advocate, that word's come up several times, advocate for themselves. These can be those moments that you've got the HR director that's been sitting through multiple interviews, they're hearing the same things, and then someone comes in, eye contact, shoulders up, different posture, and then is not only prepared to give a list of skills, but give a list of examples of those skills. That HR director is going to sit up, they're going to take notes, they're going to be much more observant of this person because they know what to say. They not only know what employers want to hear, but they are expressing that they have that willingness to learn. I think that's one of the things that you can really position with your students and they can position for themselves when they talk about self-resilience, when they talk about their own perseverance, is that they have had a willingness to learn, to look beyond their current circumstances to what they can bring into fruition for themselves. And this whole idea that nothing is permanent, failure is not permanent, and success is not a one-time act. It's something that you continue to grow in, continue to take those steps forward. And this character, the who you are at your core, defines you, not the what that you do, more so how you do that type of work. I kind of skipped over this part in the list, resilience and perseverance. We put in these points, especially in prison education. If we've got any corrections people with us today, I would love to hear from you. You have a uniquely difficult job. All of us face different obstacles. All of our students face different obstacles, but I've had the pleasure of working with some DOC folks over the last little bit, and this issue of resilience and perseverance has come up. Anna, we see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for what you do. And one of the things that this teacher often avoided with her students was talking about their goals. She said she just really, there was something in her that just kind of shied away from that conversation. And as she started to initiate questions about where they see themselves in the future and the steps that it would take to get there, it offered up these wonderful opportunities to talk about the skills that they already possessed, remind them of these power skills that they have, and then talk about practical steps forward. So these transferable skills at minimum can be an open conversation with your students. So why teach transferable skills? We've got some stats for you. So of displaced workers, 57% or 20.8 million cannot identify their transferable skills. Here it is, with a high degree of confidence. And looking at some other stats about adult students, empowering your students with confidence, period, is a major transferable skill. And then being able to speak articulately about what they can do. 58% aren't sure if they should include transferable skills or how to include those transferable skills on a resume, and 34% or 12.4 million can't provide good examples of how their skills would apply to another job. And we've all been in interviews, we've all had the, tell me about a time that you had to work as a team. We can prepare our students in the classroom with some really interesting ways, and we'll talk about some of those as we go along, to provide those examples as they take their next step. So why teach transferable skills? It could be the key to job keeping. Only 11% of new hire failures lose their job due to technical incompetence. You lack experience, but you learn quickly, huge factor. Display a can-do attitude and have a wide array of transferable skills to offer. The employer may consider you before the others. It's part of the so-called hiring for attitude approach. Some people will say that we're hiring for passion over position, or we look at the passion of over the person or their personal skills. And this is so important because we often know you can bring someone in who has all the right things on their resume, and then they get in the door and they don't necessarily know how to problem solve, or they don't know how to pivot, or they don't necessarily know how to apply certain skills in different facets. And that's something we can empower our students with as well. Why teach transferable skills? Well, adult learners have a lot of them. They certainly do. Cynthia, did you want to pop into this Google Doc?
Yeah. So again, we want to leave you with some practical tools. And I have one here for you. It's a Google Doc that the share settings on it are that they are viewable. This document is viewable to anybody who has the link. So that means you can't edit it or adapt it in any way, but you can view it. And I would like everybody, if you'd like to have an opportunity to just capture this resource, while we're doing this webinar, is a good opportunity to grab it, click the link, and it should open up in a new tab for you. And then I want to just give you a little coaching on what to do with this now, because I want you to be able to make it your own and be able to adapt it for your students and share it with your students. So here's 2 strategies for how to make yourself the owner of this document. One is, if you have a Google account, you can go up to File and you can make a copy of it. And you'll have a copy as a Google Doc on your drive. Okay, I think you have to have a Google account to be able to make a copy. If you don't have a Google account, you can go up to File and then scroll down to Download. You could even
I could. I was just thinking I could show them. So I'm in this mode. Yep.
Yeah, there's download. You can download it into your software. Or if you go up a few there's make a copy. So I see it put in the chat if you're following me. I see Maya saying thank you for the information. It's extremely important. If others could just give me a little thumbs up or a yes, if you're basically able to kind of follow, if you have the digital resilience to follow, to stick with me here. People are saying, yes, got it, thank you. Thumbs up, yay. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. If anyone's having trouble, please do not hesitate to email me and I'll help you get this. Again, our goal here is to leave you with usable materials. And this is a really good piece you can deploy. Now, the way it's set up is there's 3 columns. The first column lists the skills, and there's 10 of them. Now, if you Google transferable skills, you'll get any number. People name transferable skills in all kinds of different ways. There's people have their skills, their top 20 skills, their top 12 skills. We have identified 10, and we got them from World Education's Personal, Workplace, and Success Skills Library, which is linked at the bottom of this. Well, I'll provide you with the link. I'm not sure if it's in this Google Doc or not, but
it is. It's right here, and I'll grab it for everybody. Yeah,
that's actually the change agent. It's not the.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
But these 10 skills come from that library, and they're listed in the left column. In the middle column, there's an example that I wrote of how our students might have used, for example, the communication skill. It's just me making up something. If you wanted to put an example that might resonate more with your students, you could, once you're the owner of the document, you can feel free to alter it in any way you want.
Cynthia, this was fun when we did this at the conference together. We had a little bit more time, and all of our adult educators filled this in for themselves. Yeah. And they put themselves through the paces, and we encourage them to go back and share their findings with their students, because then that again opens up that communication that you have with your students.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And by giving a graphic organizer like this, you're helping your students make visible their skills. For example, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but the last one is digital skills, and it says you use software to at work to track your hours and to report on your work. Now, when I was teaching in a local hotel here in Boston, you know, all of my students had to do that. They signed in digitally on a device. When they finished cleaning a room in the hotel, there was a digital means by which they communicated that they were finished. I mean, they're all using digital devices in some kind of way or another. And so that's an important skill to elevate, to identify, and then maybe to amplify, you know, because if your students are able to say, oh yeah, this is a skill, I know I can do this. Now we can build from that and build in other digital literacy skills.
And Cynthia, Josh asked a really good question in the chat. He said, are there, you know, kind of hard and fast definitions for these skills, or is there a little bit of subjectivity built into that? And I think you addressed that a little bit. You know, if you go into an internet search, you're going to kind of have some different opinion on what these top skills are, but we have some resources for you here today, and definitely within the newest issues of the change agent, that's something we ask you to ask your students. Hey, what do you think communication skills are? How would you define that? And you can give them, you know, some of the industry specific definitions of that. But I think that exercise in itself can be very valuable.
Yes. Yes. Figuring out what these terms mean. I think that would be a really great teaching activity. You know, before, you know, as you're rolling it out, before you even get started, well, let's talk about what this even means.
For sure. For sure. Is there another resource in here you wanted to mention, or is this just a fillable PDF of the same?
Yeah, so there's not everybody is going to be so comfortable with the Google Doc. That same grid is available as a fillable PDF. And so, and there's a digital literacy component to just using these different tools even, right? So if you have your students fill out that form using a fillable PDF, that is a great learning activity in and of itself, because we have to do that these days in our lives. We have to fill out fillable PDFs for various reasons. So you could choose that. I wanted to make that choice available to you as well. You also might be teaching, if you're teaching in a prison, you can't really bring Google Docs in there, is my understanding. You might want to be able to print out the PDF and have students fill it out just on paper. The teaching with the Google Doc, once you own it, then you can share it with your students, and you can share it so that each person then could make their own copy, more digital learning, and they can fill it out. And a Google Doc is, is not a restricted amount of space. They might have a lot to say about their communication skills and not too much to say about their skills at self-management. So it doesn't matter. It's a flexible document. And that's a fun thing about Google Docs, and it's a good thing for students to practice with. So it is available to you in two formats: the fillable PDF, or you can print it out, a hard copy, or the Google Doc. So,
and Cynthia, I did find that link I think you were speaking of at that library. Is it the skills.worlded.org link?
yes,
Okay.
definitely check that out. That is a wonderful library of how you can teach about personal, workplace, and success skills. And to make that library, my colleagues at World Education had to identify the 10 skills that they thought were the key skills for 21st century employment. And these are the 10 that they came up with. And there's now, the resources that I've shared so far from the Change Agent are kind of random articles drawn from back issues of the Change Agent. Because as it turns out, the Change Agent is a great source of content to make visible students' transferable skills. Because just accidentally, when students are writing about their lives, they're writing about the things that they've achieved and the ways that they operate at home, at work, and in the community. But working with Jen and Essential Ed, the Change Agent has now set out to create 3 issues of the magazine that are specifically dedicated to transferable skills. And again, we use the 10 skills identified in the Personal Workplace Skills Library, and we created 3 issues that address those 10 skills. And those are issues 59 through 61. And if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see that 2 of them are published at this point, issue 59 and issue 60. They're available on our website. Issue 61 is coming out in February of 2024. So this content is available to some of you. I'm going to say a little bit about how you can get this content. I think the next slide. Yeah, if you have a subscription, you can log in and get the issues. If you don't have a subscription, you can consider getting one. It's very inexpensive. It's $30 per teacher per year. I noticed a lot of you, when you said what states you are from, there are a number of states and school systems that have bulk subscriptions where you have a username and login that you have access to. So some of you may know about this already, and you may already be able to access it through that. Also, if you're a member of Essential Ed, you'd be able to access the content as well. Maybe you want to say more about that, Jen.
I do, because I want to brag on what you do and what you do so well. And just, I think you would say the same thing, that it makes your job a whole lot easier because we have such amazing students and such incredible life stories to draw from. And this has been one of my favorite collaborations in adult education. And one of the things that we have found is that in our own professional development for our Tuesdays with Essential Education, we brought in a lot of Change Agent information in those sessions as well, because many of the things that we've been talking about this year revolving around adult retention are about these things that keep our students going. That resilience, that perseverance, that ability to connect with their peers or people that how many times have you heard this, that are just like me? And we know that our lives are never exactly the same, but there's so much that we can learn and draw from. And that peer component, we found through research over the last year, is so very important. So this can really be a changing, see what I did there? A changing element for your classroom to dive into some of these resources.
Great. All right. Well, remember to ask any questions that you have, but we're going to jump in a little bit to some content from issue 59. And what we wanted to do is take you through for each one of these skills. We wanted to give you some ideas about how to bring it up in the classroom. And for leadership and initiative, if you're just trying to warm your students up and get them thinking about this topic, You could ask them, tell me about a time when you noticed a problem, large or small, that needed to be solved and took the lead on solving it. Very important, the parenthetical there, large or small, because I think sometimes our students might think, oh, I don't solve problems. I mean, they're solving problems all day, every day, but they don't think of it that way. So just getting students warmed up to thinking about themselves as problem solvers is really important for embarking on this conversation. And then
For sure. And I think that's probably one of the biggest missed skills for adult students sometimes, because when you're in a position where you're trying to do all the things, perhaps care for a family, or at least manage all of your own daily life things, there are a lot of problem solving skills that can get overlooked. I tell the story of a student that we had who was getting ready for a job interview, and she said, I don't really have anything to put. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit too. And I just knew a little bit about her life experiences. And I said, over the last year, you've tried to figure out how, as a single parent, you're going to drop your kids off at carpool and still make it back in time to give your aging mother her medications on time, and then make it back to work within a very, very small period of time. And that's time management skills. Those are organizational skills. Those are logistical skills. We just have to arm our people with those words behind what they already do so well.
Exactly. Thank you. So, if you warm up your students with that question, it might also be helpful to bring an article where a student is writing about her own experience with leadership skills. You probably can't read the text too well on this story, but I'll just give you a little synopsis about it. Gabriela Reyes, who I think is from Texas. I have somebody in the chat from Texas who I've been chatting with. She talks about her young son who was born and needed to stay in the hospital due to an illness. And then when she brought him home, she noticed some developmental delays, and she calls them red flags. She started noticing some red flags. And so it's identifying these and then trying to get help to address the developmental delays. And the struggle that it was to get appointments, to get a diagnosis, and then to get help, and the amount of time and effort it took to then take her son to the various therapies that he needed, also to be a mom to the rest of her other children, to navigate, that challenging world, is basically the gist of her story. And she ends with this little section that's called Joy in the Journey. She says, this is the beginning of learning about special education. It is wonderful to learn about my son's condition. When I understand what he needs, then I can do more for him. It has been a beautiful journey for me and my family. I walk with other people that are going through the same thing, and we support each other. It is complicated, but there has been a lot of joy in this journey. So enormous amounts of transferable skills there, including just an emotional intelligence to be able to hang in there and find the joy in the challenge, to recognize the challenge, to be able to acknowledge the setbacks and the obstacles, but then also to be able to find joy in it and to be able to make progress, to get the right kind of help. It just took a lot of determination on her part. So bringing this story in could be like holding up a mirror for your students. They might not have the exact same story, but they might have a similar story. It might be about their kid or about their grandchild or about a kid they know or about something completely different, but a little light of recognition could go off. So I think that, bringing in these stories is really helpful. And in this issue of the magazine, there's a whole lot of stories about people taking leadership and initiative in this kind of way. Small ways, family-based ways, community-based ways, workplace-based ways, all kinds of ways. And so we wanted to lift those up for your students to be able to see themselves in those stories.
Even if you were not adult educators, you would get a lot out of these issues. Just there, chicken soup for the soul, to to make an outside reference. So Cynthia, I'll let you respond to some of those questions about subscriptions there in the chat. You're going to be more apt to be.
Yeah, yeah, Connecticut, yes. Illinois, no, but Chicago, yes. People probably should email. Oregon, yes. People should probably email me. That might be the most efficient way, because then I could also connect you to the right party who could share the information with you. Kansas, no, sorry.
So now we have some
Um,
suggestions of what this might look like to teach these leadership initiatives in the classroom, or, I think make opportunities for teachable moments. And some of these are things like, reminding the students oftentimes that they're an advocate in their own learning. They're the leader of their goals and their dreams, and they drive that ship, so to speak. And there's a lot of research behind the idea that adult students thrive when they have autonomy in their learning. So then you got a 1-2 punch. You're teaching those leadership skills, but you're also able to advance their engagement in the classroom. I love that, Cynthia, I think you put this in here, this whole idea of getting this in your head, this 80% rule. If all of us have room for improvement, even if you're scoring at a 95%, you have room for improvement. But I think some of our students do really well when they have kind of a benchmark or things to look for. And this idea of, hey, if I'm hitting a mark, it's not quite at 80%, I need to get some more help here, and I need to kind of help to fill in these gaps. And so just equipping your students with benchmarks can help as well. Peer mentoring is a great way to build leadership, as well as group leadership and activities, and any kind of student council type opportunities, organizational type opportunities that you have through your organization. And it may be small things. We had an educator that went through our professional learning community that talked about how she's developed leadership skills through a party planning committee. They had mornings where they would all schedule to bring in breakfast in the mornings, and she noticed that this particular student was always coming earlier on those mornings to help set up, and she was staying a little bit later to help clean up. So she just said, hey, do you think you want to take on this next event that we have? And she was nervous about that, but she took advantage of that moment to say, hey, I see these leadership skills in you, and let me help you develop them along the way.
So, I mean, we have about 10 more minutes left, so maybe we could sort of do one more of these and then start to close out. But another skill is communication. And a way you could warm up your students to talk about that is just to say to them, tell me about a time when you had to communicate about something at work, at home, in the community, or at your place of worship. And then just get people talking about how they communicate. And, pretty soon you're going to find out people are on WhatsApp groups. They FaceTime with people. They email people from their church or their synagogue or their mosque. They communicate with their child's teacher via Google Classroom. You're going to find out all these ways that your students are communicating. You maybe even in your own classroom, you have some kinds of communication systems that you use to keep everybody up to date on the homework or other news from the program. So just laying those out is a really good start and getting people to talk about that.
Plus, you're learning a lot about your students along the way, which is always helpful in that relationship building in your classroom.
And it might not be digital communication. It might also be, opportunities that you speak in person to people. And those would be really good to lift up as well. So here's a story from the Change Agent, issue 59 again. This is a quite amazing story by a student who is originally from Haiti and who worked at a healthcare center in Haiti. And he tells the story of how this healthcare center identified that there was too much sexual violence going on in their community, and they wanted to do something about it. And the way, he just tells the story of what they decided to do. And it involved a lot of different communication strategies, both digital and in person. And it involved thinking about who to communicate with, who to pull into meetings, how to have groups that would be effective at addressing this problem, who were the most affected populations and how to reach those populations. And so It's a really fabulous story that, you know, you could bring into the classroom to use as a model for how somebody, you know, faced a problem and addressed it. The change agent, you know, does not shy away from hard topics, you might notice. You know, and it may not be right for you to bring in an article where the central theme is something to do with sexual violence, you know, especially if you haven't quite built relationships with your students yet, or people don't have a high degree of trust with each other. Maybe this is the kind of article to bring in later in the semester when people are comfortable with each other. You can decide that as a teacher, but in the change agent, you're going to find articles that take on hard topics, adult topics, because it's adults writing about things that matter to them. And so you will find a range, some things much easier to bring into the classroom, less controversial, some things more controversial. And, you know, if you're ready to dip into a controversy, because that can be really meaningful, it's good practice to be able to talk about hard topics. It's a good way to practice listening and being respectful of difference. If you're ready to do that and you feel like you have the right foundation for that, then the content is there for you. If that's not quite right for your students, then you can skip those harder articles.
And you just mentioned that, Cynthia, as respecting differences is one of those key elements that we have wonderful, wonderful articles associated with. And I was going to mention this when we got down to this part. There were several folks that were saying, you know, they've got some clear delineations in their classroom. One educator shared that they have Russian and Ukrainian students in their classroom. I've worked in a migrant community where they kind of had competing labor groups. And so you're going to have those divisions that sometimes exist, and equipping our students with how to be able to talk about those things, equipping ourselves for how to be able to talk about those things is really, really important. And so as we teach communication in the classroom, Cynthia's already talked about this too. Communication can be verbal, it can be written, and it can also be nonverbal. I think everyone here would agree you're getting a lot of nonverbal communication from your students on a regular basis. Some of it we might not always appreciate, or some of it we might not always like, but we're giving those off as well. And so that's another way we can show our engagement within the classroom. So in the classroom, again, class discussions and presentations, essay prep is a great place to do this. Teacher-student correspondence, your ability to have those conference times or those meeting times. And then we've already mentioned this too, online forums and chat rooms. Cynthia and I are both very, very passionate about media literacy. And this is one of those things that, as a side note of communication, that is a really, really important thing to jump into with your students. As we live in a society where we have vast amounts of information in front of us, being able to sort through truth and be able to articulate our beliefs and our questions rather within those forums and chat rooms is really important.
Thank you, Jen. This is really great. I'm loving the engagement and the questions that are coming in the chat, and I love the opportunity to share all this with you. So I wonder if maybe what I want to make sure everybody knows is that you'll be getting a copy of the slides, a PDF of the slides of our slideshow today. So all the links that we shared, if you didn't manage to capture them in the chat, they will all be available to you in the slides. The PDF will have hot links that you can click on. So,
and you'll see, Cynthia mentioned for time purposes, you'll see that there's even information that we may not have gotten to today, that's in there. So maybe we want to talk about this real quick and then give them some extra resources.
Yeah. So we'll skip a little section and just go to this. If you want to go into slideshow mode, that would be great. Yeah, I thought it would be worth just to add a little bit of a note about, well, how do you actually add transferable skills to your resume? I mean, because it's a little bit of a leap, right? I mean, you can't just put on there, apply, you know, sent out group emails at my church. I mean, that's not, you know, that's not really what you want to put on the resume. You can't put, you know, applied for free tablets from the city. You know, you need to phrase it in a way that's going to hit, you know, the key words and the phrases that the employer is looking for, especially because these days so many job applications are done online, and the employer uses keywords and phrases via this applicant tracking system that will kind of like automatically, accept or reject certain resumes based on their percentage of hitting those keywords. So you want to use words and phrases that are going to be recognized by the applicant tracking system. And even if they're not using a digital means to find those keywords, they're going to be scanning resumes for those key concepts. So you want to help your students to get their resume to be responsive to the job description. And one way to do that is just read the job description, note what skills align with the transferable skills that your student have, and then help highlight those skills using the words in the job description, if that makes sense.
And if you are partnered with Essential Education, there's my dogs. Our Work Essentials program. Cynthia, I'm just going to let you take over for right now.
Yeah, that's fine. Jen mentioned she's a zookeeper, and now we hear that she was not lying about that. She's got her animals in the background. So yeah, Essential Ed has lots of resources for how to write resumes. And there's lots of resources out there that you can find in adult ed. Oh my gosh, somebody in the chat actually recognizes the bark of the dog.
There's my zookeeping skills right there.
Exactly.
Pardon me, please.
Yeah. So anyway, just throwing in this slide here to say that even if you do all this work that we've suggested with the students, there's still this other piece, which in a way could be the focus of another whole hour-long webinar, right? On resume writing and how to use keywords and things like that. But I wanted to just flag it here because you will need to help students navigate from identifying their skills to being able to put it in a resume effectively. Okay, so let's go to the ending, I think.
I do appreciate the comments about the dogs in the chat. I have a little bit of anxiety and I would stay up tonight worrying about the dogs barking in this session, but you guys are making me feel a little bit better, all of you.
Yeah, being able to let these things roll off, that is an important transferable skill. And I love, you're getting a lot of love from the chat, everybody knows.
Thank you.
So we wanted to, end with just some more resources for you, including, you'll see in here, the fourth item on the list is that library that I kept mentioning, the parent, no, not the fourth thing, the second thing, the personal and workplace skills library. You'll find that as the second link, and other resources that are really helpful for teaching and integrating this into your teaching. So keep in mind, we're aware you're trying to teach basic skills, you're trying to teach reading and writing, speaking and listening. We have content for you that helps you teach that at the same time that you're lifting up transferable skills. So it's not like you have to think of this as separate, like a separate whole lesson plan on transferable skills. You could be teaching about how to read an article for evidence, and simultaneously you are making visible students' transferable skills. So hopefully these resources will be useful to you, and both Jen and I would love to hear from you if you have any questions. So please do be in touch. And thanks so much to COABE for having us here this afternoon.
Thanks, Bethel. This was a great experience.
Thank you so much, Cynthia and Jen. If you could take the poll before you leave, and certificates will be sent to you 24 hours following the end of the webinar. So, and then please reach out to Cynthia and Jen if you have any questions. You will be sent the recording as well. So everyone have a great Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bethel.
Thanks, everybody.